Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for joining our roundtable about digitalization of process manufacturing. We'll try to cover a few subjects during this roundtable. Try to understand a bit what is process manufacturing, try to understand how digitalization can help, try to understand what are the main challenges and what are the main entry points around this interesting and one may say important process. But first of all, let's start with our participants. Uh, Dani Harari, Robert Evans, Sarah Boudot. I would ask you basically to present yourself and present your organizations. And the starting point, it's important that the Israeli ecosystem will know about you and what you represent. So, Dani, would you start, please? And after that, Sarah and Robert. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you, Leo, and thank you for having me for this session. So my name is Dani Harari, and I'm here actually with two hats. So first of all, let me describe a little bit my career path. I've been for 30 years in the army, in the Israeli Defense Forces. I retired as a brigadier general, and I was chief commander of the high-tech intelligence unit 8200, which is more known as the Startup Nation basis for in Israel. So, I retired. I've been a commander for between the years 2005 and 2009. And after retiring, I decided that there is something else out there beside the cyber and the SIGINT. So I was looking for something in the real world, and I joined a company, Machteshi Magan, which is now called Adama, which is an agrochemical company. The biggest generic agrochemical company in the world, today owned by a Chinese SOE, ChemChina. And for the last almost 11 years, I've been a senior vice president for strategy, innovation, and resources. And part of the resources I had were IDT, which was information and digital technologies, where I was responsible for both AgTech as a complementary service to the crop protection core business of the company, but also to bring Industry 4.0 pilots as part of a digital transformation to the plants of Adama, which has a lot of production sites in Israel, in China, Brazil, US, Europe, and so on. Just recently, I retired from Adama after almost 11 years. And now, as a freelance, I'm a partner in a VC, IL Ventures, which is focusing on Industry 4.0, Israeli startups, as also AgTech and FoodTech. So these are the two hats that I bring here, and I'm still a consultant for Adama. Thank you.
Okay, thank you as well for having me here. So my name is Sarah Boudot, and I'm working for Dow Chemical, so one of the three biggest chemical company, and I'm as well have a background as well in my company on the automation side, and as well have as well an IT background. But my current role is leading the Digital Operation Center in EMEAI. And the Digital Operation Center is kind of from Dow, the R&D lab for Industry 4.0, where we're looking at new digitalization and how could we apply that in manufacturing. But besides the Digital Operation Center, we have as well three different centers, which have as well three different focus areas. So the Digital Fulfillment Center is really focusing on supply chain and how could we use digitalization there to really transform it with as well as our partners. On the commercial side, how can we interact with our customers on the digitalization front? And as mentioned, operations, where we really look in how could we help a manufacturing to get as well digitalized and help that to bring forward. The Digitalization Center has different areas which we cover. So from analytics, really using AI, machine learning, but as well looking in full automation and sensors, how could we use the new technology to enhance that one? On the mobility, how could we use as well in the process industry mobile solutions, and as well how do we get our workers connected? And then as well there are other topics around that. Yeah, just as a quick intro here. Thanks, Vee.
Thank you. Robert? Robert, I think you should unmute yourself.
There we go. Okay. Now you can hear me? Great. So I'm Robert Evan. I'm representing M Ventures here in Israel. M Ventures is the strategic corporate venture capital arm of Merck of Darmstadt, Germany. It's a 400 million euro science and technology fund. It focuses on investments in the main divisions of Merck, which are biopharmaceuticals and broader science and technology areas, such as life science tools. And the areas that I focus on more closely are display and semiconductor, deep tech, and sustainability. M Ventures, our mandate is really to invest in innovative technologies and products with the potential to significantly impact Merck's core business areas. We have our headquarters in Amsterdam and offices in Germany, Israel, and the United States. And we invest globally in transformational ideas driven by great entrepreneurs. M Ventures really takes an active role in its portfolio companies and teams up with the entrepreneurs and co-investors to really translate innovation towards commercial success. We have a really strong focus on early stage investing and company creation, including the creation of spin-offs to leverage Merck's science and technology base. Here in Israel, we have invested in 9 companies total in all the different fields that we have. And more specifically, we have 3 companies that we've invested in that are specifically in the smart factory field. We have the company Wiliot with its Bluetooth-free, battery-free Bluetooth. We have Feelit, very powerful sensors, and Pixie, which has machine vision sensing technology, which can be used in many different applications in the smart factory. And my personal background is I have been in many different startup companies in Israel in the fields of 3D printing, in nanosilver printing, and in PCB 3D printing. And I also spun up a company myself from a university, so very hooked into this early stage investing. And now it's really nice to hook all that in with this smart factory area, which I'll talk about a bit more later. Thanks.
Okay, so great. Thank you for the introductions. I think as a starting point for our conversation, basically for the audience, we will dedicate something like 40, 45 minutes for conversation, and then we'll keep some time for questions if you will have. So please send them on the chat platform and we'll try to refer to them as we go. So basically as a starting point, we're talking here about process manufacturing. All the ideas of digitalization are here for many years. They all have been transformed many industries that we all well know, banking, e-commerce, etc. But still, when we're looking on more physical industries, like manufacturing, like healthcare, we're finding out that the impact of digital technologies is still lagging behind. So everyone today understands the huge potential. Everyone understands there are things that could be done better. And even I would dare to say that everyone understands that with digital, you may potentially break existing glass ceilings that you cannot break with any other conventional work. So as a starting point, I would like to ask you, what are the main goals? I mean, process manufacturing working here for many years, producing drugs, producing chemicals, producing biological compounds, etc. And in order to bring such a new systems to these production floors, the designed to be safe, designed to be effective, certainly not designed to be digital, and we'll talk about it. But still, in order to bring these technologies and workflows and basically a disruptive way of doing things, you need a very good reasons. So let's focus for a moment on the reasons, on the drivers. Danny, for 11 years, you was responsible for basically shaping the strategy of one of the biggest chemical companies in the world. Certainly, and your experience with digitalization is huge based on your previous background. And I think one of the people that for many years tried to bridge between these two very distant worlds, you can represent a lot of wisdom, both what are the challenges and what are the problems, and of course, how you deal with all this. So as a starting point, when you are looking on Adama, what are the main drivers that basically justify this type of processes, this type of adjustment of new things, or actually searching for new areas and new opportunities around the digitalization?
Okay, so I will leave the agtech part, which is more to the agriculture. It's another webinar. And let's focus on the chemical side and of the production. And actually, when you look at I can call it a legacy industry. The chemical industry in Israel, although there are some big players like ICL and Adama, still it's, and Teva, of course, still it's legacy industry. And why do I call it a legacy industry? Because first of all, it's a very old, Adama or Mahtashim Agan is as old as the age of Israel, more than 70 years. And with many, the best people, engineers, employees, and still doing great job. 70% of all the production of Adama is done in Israel, for example, not in China and not in other places. But you find a very conservative situation, a very conservative industry with many systems all around, many inputs, many outputs. Data is not structured, Excel sheets, notebooks, experienced people with their own, keeping their own information to themselves and being experts, of course. So the challenge of bringing something new as innovation in every field is a huge challenge, but especially to this kind of legacy industry. And why to do it? Well, this is another question, but the big challenge is how to make this synthesis or formulation plants do whatever they need to do, but do it much better, cost effective, and bring the money to the company.
Thank you. Sarah, you're basically responsible to bring new startups to your organization. So let's focus for a moment. We will talk about the challenges and the obstacles and everything, but let's speak for a moment about the drivers. I mean, what will make your organization happy? What type of startups you should find for them in the area of digitalization?
Yeah, it just really depends on solving problems. So that's just kind of as well what we need to sell internally. So to really, what are the key problems to bring it forward? And as Danny mentioned, we have a lot of legacy systems and a lot of brownfields, yeah, chemical plants out there. So that means we have a diverse set of different equipment. So it's not standardized, and we don't start from greenfield with fresh data. So there's as well a lot of data, unstructured data available, but we have problems to solve. So really to increase the customer experience, but as well the employee experience. And there are certain problems to solve to make, for example, our customers are asking us as well now be transparent when the order can come. And that means we need as well to look in our systems, how do we make that happen? So one example, like predictive maintenance. If we would know a week ahead or hopefully longer ahead that it will break, then we can act immediately and can solve it. But as well that we need to have a problem statement to really sell it as well internally. So how could we help digitalization in driving our strategy around that one?
Thank you. Robert, same question, I think. You should unmute.
There we go. Okay. So Merck, within Merck, there are many initiatives all over the company as we're looking for an edge on our competitors to improve process productivity. We're very much a specialty chemical player doing modular manufacturing in many, many cases. We really want to digitize our R&D, our production, and the full supply chain in the areas that are relevant for us: chemicals, biology, life sciences, and pharma. And we really want to share data with our customers to improve, at the end of the day, the product quality. So because of that, what we're looking at is a few very specific fields that's important for us. So these are things like connected labs, things like R&D databases are very important for us to understand more, to share data, computational modeling, materials discovery. In smart, then when we go to the manufacturing, we're looking at things like modular manufacturing, digital twinning, metrology. We're looking at taking the sensors, things like Raman sensors, infrared, mass spectroscopy sensors, and looking at what information that's giving us, and combining it all, and to do, at the end of the day, data sharing, advanced analytics, and process optimization, because we want to have a smart supply chains and things like data marketplace, be able to share the data from R&D into production, maybe even with our suppliers, while also looking at things like privacy and IP. Let's say, to give you that's kind of like the global perspective, but let's look at more specifically the perspective of the factory manager. What really is interesting for the perspective for the factory manager? He really wants to, or he or she really wants to understand what is the root cause of any changes in product characteristics, so that they can make changes, adapt, and improve yield, and well before and irrespective of what of a breakdown. So here we're talking not predictive maintenance, but something that's much deeper. We need to understand if the root of the problem that we have is maintenance related, is it training related, is it because of the raw materials, is it the environment, is it such as temperature or humidity. So we want to understand all these things in depth to be able to make the change and to really bring a better solution in our process fields that really helps us deliver a better solution for our customers.
Okay, so basically, if I'm trying to summarize what you've just said, basically the three of you, I think that, and I'll try not to be evangelist too much, but basically you spoke about two complementary aspects, which the two of them together basically supposed to convince us that we are talking here about a paradigm shift and not just about minor innovative process. One element is infrastructure, a critical infrastructure. And you called it sometimes brown fields versus green fields or whatever. We spoke about additional data layers, but the bottom line is that, you know, the fuel of digitalization is data, and the quality of data and the capability to use it, accessibility, or different abilities that comes with data depends on if you want 5 abilities or 7 abilities, but basically you need data. Today the data is not there basically, or if it is there, it is siloed both both physically and logically, and stored in many, many places. And it is a challenge, a big one. On the workflow parameters, you also mentioned that most of the people never been trained, or not people, even the system have not been trained to really utilize digital infrastructures. Uh, Never been utilized. And if they did use data, it was usually around R&D or root cause investigations, which always very costly and takes a lot of time, which means pretty limited operationally wise. And of course, on the transition between R&D and manufacturing, it's always a big issue as well. So we have these two pillars of infrastructure and workflows. Let's talk for a moment on the infrastructure, because without effective infrastructure, you won't be able to do anything. And there's always this chicken and the egg problem of, if we won't have data, we won't be able to do analytics. But if we don't have powerful enough analytics and good ROI models, then no one will invest in the data. So Danny, when you are sitting with 25, 30 factories around the world, which basically doing things which are not really uncommon one to another, how are you actually moving these systems that used to do something and characterized by the very specific structure of data with enough, and data could be papers, and data could be Excel, and data could be historians and systems which are more evolved. How are you actually pushing the system toward the situation that it could start leverage on its data, both conceptually and practically?
Well, practically, you need to deliver. You need to demonstrate to those people that you can have a success stories, bring pilots. Don't try to change everything. 25 sites in one system. This is just impossible, especially if you're a global company with different cultures, languages, processes in the sites, in the factories. So you need to have to choose the right place for a pilot. Try to be very humble with the pilot targets and missions, and then show the results pretty quickly, because there is no patience for very long and costly processes with the innovation. And then when you succeed, you have to promote it all over and share the successes with all the sites and the factories. And of course, there is the whole point of bringing innovation top down and bottom up. You need to do them both. You cannot just have it top down from the, for example, global operations COO of the company. You need to go down to the site manager and sometimes even foremen and employees in a site to get them be connected to the change. It is a change, it is difficult, but it can be done. You have to prove it and deliver as soon as possible.
Sarah, how does a giant like Dow refers to building a new infrastructure? Does he actually understand that there is a new infrastructure involved in this process?
Yeah, definitely. So we have as well AI experts as well across the different centers and as well on the enterprise level. So that means similar example. So as Danny mentioned, so you need to start as well with a small proof of concept to really ensure, okay, what does it bring us in a small test environment, but to be sure that this can be as well leveraged. So in case it's a success and it makes sense to combine different data sources or more, how to bring that connection available. So we work as well with our IT very closely. So our digital centers are half the function aligned so that we really understand the needs, but as well IT, because without the IT, we can make it happen. And as well in that case, we ensure that the strategy is in place to as well scale it up and change the infrastructure. So that means, yeah, it's kind of on a historian really on a plant level, because we store data on a plant level as well from the security perspective. And when we want now using AI models, solutions which bring us a resolve problems, as Robert as well mentioned. So how can we make it happen? So how could we transfer the data from the different sources? Or is there maybe some sensors which are additionally needed, which we don't connect to our control systems or our process systems just because of security reasons? But how do we can get connected? And that really happens only with small proof of concepts, but as well with looking forward, how could we make it happen as well to scale it up quickly? Because as Annie mentioned, our managers and production leaders, they are not patient. They want to make it as well happen when they found out that someone make it successful. And that's kind of where IT and OT need to work together.
Robert, how does it work in Merck?
Okay, in Merck, again, I'm coming here with the perspective of M Ventures. And of course, we work very closely with Merck. All our investments have to have a backer within the company. So the way we work is we identify a potential target. We have our intro calls with a few different members of the team. And here it's nice because, again, as a CVC, we have, from the beginning, we have our team of worldwide specialists who have looked at many other similar technologies around the world, bringing their insight when we speak to this startup. And then we look at these startups and say, okay, what kind of pilot can we do? Of course, pilots are the classic way that you want to engage with these companies. But it's nice that we're looking to do, on one hand, a pilot, but we're looking with the M Ventures, with the Ventures hat. So this combination is kind of nice. So we know that if the pilot goes well, then we will look more intensively at a possible investment. So when we use these pilots, Merck, of course, as a company, is quite open to this, and even their internal initiatives now to encourage this more and more. And what's really nice in Israel is we have a large presence in Israel. We even have production and R&D facilities here. So we can offer the Israeli entrepreneurs something that's quite unique, that they can be doing a pilot with a multinational, big German multinational company, which can be scaled, of course, but they can do all this locally with the quicker decision-making that is quite typical locally, and with a potential venture backing if things go well. So that's really how we work with this field. And of course, we have a great use case highlighting this. We have the case of FeelIt, which makes these super high sensitive sensors that can detect things like pressure and temperature, very, very minute changes that can give predictive maintenance and alerts. And the way they work, they came into our innovation lab very early on, and they engaged with us, and one of our factories was interested. They did a trial. The trial went well. After a couple of months, they actually secured their first PO thanks to this kind of process. And once this PO was made public with a press release, all of a sudden other groups within Merck got interested and people outside got interested. So this is the evolution that we see. We really want to do it, we can call it kind of a bottom up, where the pilot, a successful pilot, generates interest. So it's interest that's not just, wow, these guys are really cool, they have great technology. It's that plus the fact, hey, they've proven themselves. They've done something very concrete that can really help and scale it through the organization, and then maybe even make a venture investment in that.
Okay, so we basically what you are saying, and we said that we want to look on infrastructure and workflows, and what connects this infrastructure to workflows is actually the understanding that it is impossible to change workflows without the people on the ground, meaning you cannot really build a product in this area in your office in Tel Aviv or wherever it is and come and sell it to Merck. I mean, it's highly necessary to collaborate with the people on the ground, to show value, to show use cases. And in many cases, when we're talking about digitalization, even collect enough data to be able to build all these AI predictions and all these type of things. So the prospect is pretty well understood. I mean, I think that after 20 years of digitalization, no one really needs this explanation why a prediction might be cool. Go to Netflix, they will suggest you a few films and you understand what prediction is. Nice. But still, when we're approaching these big companies and within these big companies to this very, very, very rare and busy people like process engineers and maintenance engineers, because this is really the elite of the people who are working on this site, we still have to work with them in order to show value. And in many places also to understand what the value is and how we are translating all these ideas of digitalization into real value. So, Danny, when you starting to work with a startup, when you bringing a startup to such a system like Adama and beyond, now you're looking at an investor, what would be the main aspects that you would suggest this startup to focus on and that in your eyes and based on your vast experience in the last 10 years that will make this process a success?
Okay, the first thing is look for the pain points, because if you want to change something, you need to understand what bothers those people on the ground, the employees, the foreman, the site manager, and see where is the pain point in the whole process. Either it is synthesis or formulation in our case. After you understand, if then as a startup you got the technology to address this pain point, okay, then you go. But when you go, as I mentioned, you have to come very humbly, and the targets should be predefined, not that you're going to revolutionize the whole site or the whole production flow, because you will fail for sure. So you need to focus and you need to create value to the site. And for the usually for the process engineer, there are the most focused people, and you have to show them that first of all, probably you will have to structure the data for the first time, because the first time that they will see all the data structured. Until now, it was just in too many systems, Excel sheets, the notebooks, and everything. After you organize their data, they suddenly see a picture that perhaps they did not see before. Don't jump into prediction, AI, ML, deep learning right on from the very beginning, because it will take time. It will take time, and you first have to gain their confidence that you bring value to them. So start slow, and later on, after restructuring the data, you will start having the artificial intelligence and the machine. Of course, if you have the right algorithms, and then you will create the real value. But don't run into prediction right at the very beginning, because you will fail for sure.
Sarah, same question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really understand the problems and put yourself into the shoes of the end users. So who you talk to, because what we saw a lot is you were really passionate about your solution or your technology, and you use kind of your own language. I had that as well when I started my role in IT, and I was programmation and supported all the plans. I got the feedback from the beginning, talk our language, otherwise we don't listen to you. So it's really to understand what the end user wants to hear. Like you mentioned, process engineer, what might be the problems, what they want to solve, what data is it? And then, as Danny as well mentioned, don't jump directly into that, how to predict it. Understand the industry, because the process industry is different than the discrete ones. So we have other challenges and other problems, other data sets. So be as well open if you don't have use cases or successes yet in the post industry, but that you're open and as well to willing to listen and to really use the time as well to just listen to it. When there is an opportunity to share your technology, that is as well that case. Another thing is really to be open with your solution. So what does it have impact? If it's kind of a black box and it gets signals out, what does it mean? So are you as well willing to share what the internals are? So that's as well something which we shared a lot. And as well, something is, yeah, for sure, as a big company, there are a lot of doors to knock on. But if you got a door open, try to use that door for now and avoid kind of knocking on different doors. So I think that is as well possible, because it's as well annoying sometimes for our big industry when we already talk about certain things. We try to internally connect folks so that we can work on that together, because as a small company, you don't want to have 10 different questions from 10 different sides from just one company. Let's work on that together to find out how to make it happen. Just as a quick start there. Yeah.
Great. Robert, something to add?
Well, it's tough to add because my two colleagues made so many points that I agree with, so many relevant points. I would add that something that I've seen based on my past experience with a lot of startup companies, when you do a beta site with a company, you always want to find that champion, that early adapter, the guy who really likes the cool technology because he realizes this will make his process advance. And I would say you need to look for that within the big companies. You need to work with this guy who's, although he's a big company guy, he's interested in doing something special and bringing more value, and he's thinking outside of the box. You want, as a startup, you really want to hook up with that kind of person, because that will drive you forward in a different way than just the guy doing his job. He wants to improve a little bit. He might not be that motivated. And for a startup to succeed with a new technology, you really need that chemistry of a guy who wants to give you a chance, use the new technology, drive his productivity, drive his process forward. So I would say that's quite important. Look for that match, and together with, of course, a fast implementation plus all the other things that my colleagues have said.
Great. So great points. Thank you. And then I think one of the biggest questions, we're looking on process manufacturing, it's huge part of the worldwide economy, an important part. And as a startup, you're always asking yourself, one, is there a real disruptive trend? If not, we have nothing to do there. If yes, cool, let's try to join this wave. Two, which is not less important, what is the play of the startups in this area and what is the play of the big companies in this area? And does, I don't know, Siemens, Rockwell, Schneider, ABB, and others are my partners potentially? Are they my competitors? Again, potentially. Danny, when you are looking on, you're sitting in Adama and you're building your strategy, your IT strategy, your digital strategy, how do you balance between these forces? I mean, how do you position, how do you frame what is the play of the big companies that are already doing things and has huge amount of arsenal potential capabilities And if you'll go to their website, they're basically doing everything. On the other hand, you have startups who has usually no capabilities, but they want to do everything, but in a bit different way. So how can you balance? And if you can, take your perspective and then sit for a moment in the position of the CEO or the entrepreneur of the startup to understand, should I talk to Rockwell? Should I talk to Siemens? Or should we make them surprise and disrupt their business?
Well, I think that when you're in a corporate like Adama, you look at the whole ecosystem, because of course you're scouting on the startups with the new technology and disruptive. Sometimes you don't even know that it is exist in this kind of disruptive technology, and they come with a solution which only your process engineers can figure out to what kind of pain points it will be directed to. So you are scouting the startups. You're looking at your competitors, and there is a benchmark in this in the industry, and you look also to the investors and the VCs, because there are some corporates who are not willing to invest in equity of a startup just in order to sit near the table. You can have pilots, you can have them as a supplier later on, but you don't necessarily need to invest in a startup, but give them the bread, give them enough work so they can live and they can expand and grow together with you. So you look everywhere. And of course, as a corporate, you need to set your strategy. Where are you going? What is your strategy about innovation? And how do you bring innovation to this kind of legacy industry? Of course, I believe that Israel is a great ecosystem for this kind of strategy, also in terms of startups, but also around with VCs. And even though the industry itself is not in such a global position, still you got some places and some global markets that you can bring the Israeli startups over there.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, so I think with big companies, it's really about the scalability. How could we really scale up across the regions, across the world, when there are big IT needs or control systems? So in those cases, for sure, the big companies might be the best one to support it. But as well with startups, you have the entrepreneur in front of you with new ideas, as well as challenging status quo, and really to disruptive, you need to have this kind of person as well internally, as Robert mentioned as well. That's the kind of the right guy to connect to. But as well with those startups, you find as well other issues or problems which you might didn't see, because you have outside the box thinking. And that is as well what we looking for as well, to look at new technology, and as well, disrupting, how could we make it happen. And another thing is a startup is more agile and as well willing to adopt or change it or modify it to unique needs from a company. So that's why we as well very interesting as well in the Israel startups community, because it's kind of this passion which you bring to those discussions. And that's a little bit not a little bit, but sometimes that's with really big companies not easy to do. They can't change quickly and adopt it and make it happen. Where for sure internally we need as well to tell it differently, because when we have this kind of solution and it works and it's fantastic, we need some time as well to scale it up and as well to help the startup to make that happen. So that's kind of the two ways, where maybe with a big company, if the solution is already proven on the market, it may be easier to scale up for sure. But is it really helping us and disrupting and as well bringing us forward? versus a startup which might need more time and as well working on that technology together. But at least we can help or challenge it a little bit more.
Good. So, Robert, if you have something to add, and we have another 5 minutes, so I would also ask you start with some kind of a closing remarks that you
Okay.
feel that we missed during this conversation.
No, I just wanted to add that it's very tempting for a small startup. All of a sudden, a big company offers you some sort of cooperation, which is very tempting and very exciting. But one must be careful. A startup can easily be bear hugged and frozen by this big company. So really, one must find the balance of working with a big company, but maintaining a good part of the IP and the know-how internally, and make sure you can work with others. It's a delicate balance, and I've seen small companies being bear hugged, and then it kind of closes them off. But on the other hand, as a big company now representing Merck and M Ventures, we're trying to find the balance by having programs internally where we can help the startup without bear hugging them and allowing them to expand and work with others. So it's kind of a delicate balance, and I think it's just something to keep in mind. That's all.
Danny, for the last hour, we spoke how hard the process manufacturing as a field is and how it is challenging to bring real digitalization to this area. So why, no one can say that you don't understand these challenges, and still you're living at Dama, you're opening a VC, and you still want to be an investor in these fields. So to finish this roundtable on with an optimistic note, isn't it easier to invest in fintech?
Or in agtech? Well, it's not, but we are all trying to reinvent ourselves from time to time. So as myself, I'm not looking for an easy path. And I believe since technology is there already, you just need to take it to the right places. And I believe that the legacy industries need it the most. And now it's the time. We're already late. I mean, we could do it like 10 years ago, and it is late, but it still can bring you a lot. And in our chemical business, we are looking for the golden batch. You know it better, Leo. We are looking for the golden batch, which can be the best batch or the worst batch. Both of them are golden batch. But you call it gold because after all, show me the money. The whole thing is around cost of goods and revenues for the companies, and also for the startups, and also for the VCs. So just combining all of them and see it from many different angles, it just helps to create this as a successful story.
So the time is right, the potential is huge. Sarah, closing remarks?
Yeah, I think it's really that we all need to work as well together to get the legacy systems up and running, and as well kind of big companies like chemicals, we need as well to adopt. So we have that in our daily life. So there we don't accept anymore really old Excel spreadsheet, which we are sending back and forth, or certain things. We would like to have it immediately. And that's what the end customer wants. They want to have it quicker and possible. So that as well, all the different industries need to move faster and faster. And digitalization and Industry 4.0 helps that to bring that forward. So that's only possible to challenge it all together and as well find a way to make it happen.
So, guys, I would like to thank you for your time, for your ideas, for your patience to all these questions. And I hope to meet you next year again at the conference with much more success stories and with starting of new trends. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Leo and guys.
Have a
Bye.
wonderful day. Bye.
Bye bye.